All right, I want to discuss passing data to your views. I'll head back to my routes file. Let's say when you visit the homepage, there's some bit of data that we need to calculate or fetch from the query string or query from the database. For now, I'll hardcode it. We'll call it tasks. To begin, we'll have 3. Go to the store, go to the market, and go to work. Okay, I'm now going to pass this data to my view. We can do that as the second argument of the view function, like this. Tasks is tasks. Now, as it turns out, there's actually a few ways to do this, but let's keep it simple for now. So at this point, we're saying I want to return and load the welcome view, but I also want to give that welcome view a variable called tasks, and that variable should be equal to this array. Okay, so now I'll hit Command P and go to my welcome view, and we'll say right here, we're going to spit out all of our tasks. Now we'll start with basic PHP, but later I'm going to show you how to do it with Blade. So we'll say for each tasks as task, we'll do the shorthand here. Then within a list item, I will echo out the task like this. And then finally, we'll wrap it within an unordered list and we'll be good to go. All right, let's switch back to Chrome. And there we go. We have our list of tasks. Nifty, right? But if I switch back, yeah, this is the traditional PHP way to do it. But if you ask me, it's kind of ugly. So this is where Blade comes into play. As you learned about in the last episode, Blade is Laravel's templating engine, and it gives you not just layout files like we learned in the last episode, but a special syntax that again ultimately compiles down to vanilla PHP. It looks like this. For a for each, I could say @for each. Now, I don't need any of this. And here I have to declare end for each, so I could say @end for each. All right, let's leave it like that. Switch back, refresh, and I get the same thing. But instantly it's clear this is a little more easy on the eyes. Now, behind the scenes, once again, when you run the page, Laravel is going to read this file, compile it all down. It's going to detect things like this and basically do a simple replacement where it sees this and it replaces it with this. That's actually what's happening behind the scenes. Now, when it compiles that down, it will cache it. And then for future requests, we'll just serve that pre-compiled file to help with performance. Okay, a bit of a side note there. Anyways, here, the same is true. I can use the short PHP echo syntax, or I can use 2 braces. Now, if you come from the JavaScript world, this will look a lot like mustache. It's fairly standard across community. Come back, give it a refresh, and there we go. So I hope you can see that this is much easier on the eyes and the fingers versus that. I like it. So now if we switch back, if you have more data, go to the concert or something like that, switch back, and that will now be reflected in your view. Now, a couple more quick notes. You can pass as many items here as you want. So if you want a variable called foo that equals foobar, then you can pass it through like so, and instantly I will have access to a variable. So we'll say my foo website. Refresh, and there you go. Now, as an example, we can fetch anything from the query string. So maybe this will be some kind of title parameter. This is going to look for, well, actually a couple of things. But to start, it's going to look for anything in the query string. Title equals Laracasts. Now, you can see it reflected here. Now, a quick note here. Because we're using braces like this, behind the scenes, well, it's actually a little bit more than Laravel just doing this. It's actually going to escape the data to add a little protection for you. So for example, if I were to say right here, or even in the browser, something like this, script, alert, foobar. Let's switch back and give it a refresh, and you'll see behind the scenes, it's escaping all of that. Now, there's a way to turn that off, and sometimes you will want to. Just be very careful. If I switch back, I can use this syntax instead. 2 exclamation points on each side. And I often think of the exclamation points as little Metal Gear symbols that say, be careful, are you sure this is what you want to do? And sometimes you will want this, especially if you have complete control over what that data and what that content is. But anyways, if I were to come back and give this a refresh, now you get the alert when we take that form. So be super, super careful about this. The general rule is all user-provided data, whether it's through a query string or a search form or a comment form, All of that data is guilty until proven innocent. And again, luckily, Laravel kind of helps you with this. When you use the standard syntax here, it's going to escape it for you. Now, one more thing if we switch back here. I'll return this to foobar. During this learning stage for you, you may look at source code that passes data to views in a slightly different way. If you see something like this, return view welcome, but then you see a syntax like this, with tasks is tasks, and with foo is foo. So let's get rid of that. This is equally acceptable, and I guess that should just be the string. Anyways, if I come back and give it a refresh, we still get the same output, and that would be fine. Now, you might be wondering, well, how is there a method called with tasks? You can think of this as a small sweetener that Laravel provides. It basically handles it through magic methods. So when you say with tasks, of course, that method doesn't exist. So Laravel will strip that off and essentially do the same thing as we had earlier. But often, especially when you're passing a single argument like this, I think that looks really clean. And further, if we take that form, well, we can just inline tasks altogether. And now we get something like this. And in fact, if you want to go one further, you could say with and then do this form. Foo is bar and tasks is some task. Switch back, give it a refresh, and we still get the same thing. Now, I don't tell you this to overwhelm you with all the different ways to do it. I'm just letting you know if you come across this, there are equally sufficient ways to handle it. But in general, adopt one or two of the options. So in this series, you will often see me do this. Okay, let's move on to the next episode.